Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the second of 5 conversations with practitioners about the What Works Clearinghouse Practice Guide on designing and delivering career pathways at community colleges. My name is Sarah Costello from Abt Associates, and I'm the project director of the What Works Clearinghouse Post-Secondary Contract, which is funded by IES. This Practitioner's Perspective video series is designed to bring in practitioners from the field to discuss their on-the-ground experience in implementing the practice guide recommendations. Today, I am joined by 3 experts to talk about Recommendation 2. Michelle Van Noy is the Associate Director of the Education and Employment Research Center at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. She served as an expert panel member guiding the development of the practice guide, and she will be moderating a conversation with our 2 guest practitioners. Will Durden is the Director of Basic Education for Adults at Washington State Board of Community and Technical Colleges, where he formerly worked as a policy associate. He is also a former IBES instructor. And lastly, Danielle Perry is the Integrated Education and Training Coordinator at Peninsula Regional Education Program, an adult education program that is part of Newport News Public Schools in Virginia. She was a former middle school instructor before moving into adult education as a GED instructor, distance learning facilitator, and assessor for the National External Diploma Program. Welcome, and thank you all for joining me in this conversation. Before I turn the presentation over to our guests, I first want to briefly introduce Recommendation 2 and its evidence rating. The second recommendation in the practice guide focuses on instruction. Recommendation 2 is to deliver contextualized or integrated basic skills instruction to accelerate students' entry into and successful completion of career pathways. Contextualization can take 2 forms. Contextualized basic skills instruction broadly refers to instructional strategies that make explicit connections between learning basic skills and occupational content. Integrated basic skills instruction refers to the strategy by which basic skills and occupational content instruction are delivered at the same time, often by a team that includes a basic skills instructor and a post-secondary occupational instructor. The What Works Clearinghouse staff and expert panel assigned Recommendation 2 a moderate level of evidence, which means that there is some evidence meeting What Works Clearinghouse standards that the practices improve student outcomes, but there may be ambiguity about whether the improvement is the direct result of the practices or whether the findings can be replicated with a diverse population of students. This rating was based on 9 studies of interventions that include contextualized or integrated basic skills instruction. 7 of the 9 studies meet What Works Clearinghouse group design standards without reservations, and the other 2 studies meet What Works Clearinghouse group design standards with reservations. For each recommendation, the practice guide provides details about the recommended practice, including how the panel arrived at the level of evidence rating, guidance about how to carry out the recommendation, potential obstacles and solutions, and tools and resources to support carrying out the recommendation. Today, we will focus on the how-to section of the practice guide. The practice guide offers 5 steps on how to carry out Recommendation 2. The first how-to step is to assess CTE instructional materials to identify the math, literacy, and writing skills students need to successfully progress along career pathways, assess students to determine their skill levels, and identify opportunities to contextualize instruction. Taking a student-centered approach to planning is a running theme throughout the recommendations. It is important to understand students' incoming skill levels and continuously assess student progress in order to tailor instructional materials that will move students forward through their chosen programs and pathways. The second is to determine strategies for teaching basic skills that are appropriate for the student population served and the resources available. There are 2 common strategies: pre-pathway bridge programs that offer contextualized basic skills curricula, and integrated instruction where students begin an occupational training course on a pathway, but are team taught by an occupational instructor and a basic skills instructor. The third how-to says, if implementing a team teaching model for courses with integrated instruction, select a model that best fits your institution and faculty. There are different ways that programs have approached team teaching. For example, the basic skills instructor can participate as an active student, summarizing and reiterating key points that confuse students, or posing clarification questions to the instructor. The basic skills instructor can deliver part of the content, or the basic skills instructor and the occupational instructor can co-deliver the instruction. The practice guide provides short vignettes of how these team teaching models may look in the classroom. The next how-to is to provide professional development and collaborative planning time to support team teaching. It is important to find ways to make sure that instructors have collaborative teaching time to work together on their teaching strategies. And finally, the last how-to step is to assess whether basic skills instruction, contextualized or integrated, is delivered in a manner that is resulting in students achieving their learning goals. This goes back to the first how-to about continuously assessing student progress and tailoring instruction or student supports to help move students through the program. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Michelle, Will, and Danielle, who will bring this recommendation and how-to steps to life by sharing examples from their experience as practitioners implementing career pathways, and specifically covering this recommendation about contextualized and integrated basic skills instruction.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm happy to be joined by two expert practitioners today who have a wealth of experience in putting this recommendation to practice, Will and Danielle. Welcome, Will and Danielle, and thank you for joining me today. Will, let's start with you. Washington State's Integrated Basic Skills Education Training, or IBEST model, is nationally recognized. The model is also one that has been rigorously studied. For my research on IBEST, I think that one misunderstanding about the model is that it is implemented the same way at every IBEST site across Washington State. In reality, for each element of IBEST, there are variations in implementation. Can you start by sharing the IBEST model and then describe the variations in which the Washington State programs have implemented the model?
Yeah, thank you, Michelle, for pointing out that IBEST can look different depending on the institution and the program. To provide some initial background context, IBEST started in 2005 as a pilot, and it has expanded ever since, so we've been running it for probably close to 17 years now. Back at that time, there was a belief that adult education was really there to help students learn the English language or get their GED or high school equivalent. However, we learned that at the end of the day, students really were in search of living wage careers and improved lives based on, improved wages and improved job prospects. And so we realized that our traditional adult education programs were not really designed to help students take that next step in their path, and that we could do so much more for them by pairing the instruction, the adult education instruction, up with instructors in different areas of study, what we now think of as career pathways, so that students could get that adult education instruction alongside at the same time as training for living wage work. So from those initial pilots, IBEST kind of evolved and coalesced around some really key fundamental aspects. And we really think of it as having three foundational elements that form the core of the model. These three foundational elements hold IBEST together. They're present regardless of variance in implementation. So I think those three are really key for folks to understand. And those three elements are contextualization, which we're talking about today, team teaching, and wraparound supports or navigational services. I'll kind of highlight each of those briefly. Contextualization, when we talk about that, specifically in Washington State, we take the college and career readiness standards, which are the standards that govern our adult education programs, and we contextualize those standards to program outcomes, workforce and now even transfer program outcomes. And so those program outcomes from the career pathway programs really form the high goals that we set for the students, with the adult education standards contextualizing them to really help students meet those outcomes. And so that contextualization is that first key. That second key is the team teaching. And that's where adult education faculty pair up with program faculty and work jointly, both behind the scenes to plan instruction and then in the classroom to actually deliver the instruction based on those combined standards and outcomes. Finally, the wraparound supports or navigational services, equally critical to the model. They're designed to really keep students in the game and guide them to completion. Those supports begin at intake and really follow students all the way to the workforce. And so it's really helping students navigate the system, get the resources and support they need to be successful in their IBEST program. Now that I've kind of given you the overview of what stays the same no matter what, Michelle, I really want to directly address your question about the variables and the different ways that IBEST can look when it's actually implemented. So some of the variations that I want to highlight can include modality, and that's become front and center in the pandemic, of course. We have the traditional face-to-face model where all of that instructional overlap, that team teaching, happens live in the same classroom at the same time. However, it also functions in hybrid and online environments. And so some of that overlap can be that joint teaching time in the classroom, but it can also be how two instructors engage in discussion boards and assignment overviews and assisting students with completing assignments and asking questions about assignments. So that can happen in a learning management system. It can happen in a Zoom session. So there's a variety of modalities that can deliver that team teaching. The percentage of team teaching, or what we call the overlap, can also vary. Our minimum requirement in Washington State is 50%. So to give you a really simple example, if a class meets for 50 hours of instruction, we say that at least 25 hours of that instruction needs to be team taught. But some programs take that all the way to 100% because they really see the benefit of having the two teachers together all the time in the classroom. It cuts down on some of the outside of the classroom planning time because they always know what's going on because they're always in the classroom together. There's also different team teaching models that are used. And this was a little bit in the overview today as well. We train faculty on 6 team teaching models, and we encourage faculty to try them all. But certainly some faculty and some programs will gravitate towards certain ones more than others. And that can be based on content, mode, styles and preferences, and even the physical design of the classroom space, which can allow for certain types of those team teaching models to work better than others, right? So there's a lot of considerations that go into that. A couple more things. The use of a support class. We don't change the structure of the academic program, the workforce program. The classes, the credit hours, the outcomes, all of those things stay the same. However, we can offer an additional support class, which is just focused on the adult ed instructor providing more of that content support for students. So that class could meet before or after the main content class to either prep students for the content class or maybe to help them break down what just occurred in the content class. So that support class can be used to really enhance the program, although it is technically optional. So many programs use it and some programs don't. And then finally, I think that the other big variance is that this began, IBEST really began to support short-term certificate programs, but we had so much success with that and seeing students want to continue in their pathway that we've expanded those to degree programs, both workforce programs, the kind of bread and butter of IBEST, but also increasingly academic IBEST programs that help students get through the English and math requirements of a transfer degree so that they can move further down into that degree pathway to earn the associates and then even transfer on to a 4-year. So again, great question, Michelle. And those are some of the key variables that really are in play when programs implement IBEST.
Thanks, Will. That's really helpful to give us a better understanding of sort of IBEST and how it works and how it varies. I know that you've traveled across the country to different states to talk about how to apply the IBEST model in different contexts. And I'd like to ask you, what are some variations you see in how different states or programs outside of Washington have adopted the IBEST model? And what are some trade-offs you see in these adaptations?
Thanks, Michelle. An equally great question. Now that we've talked about the Washington state variables, once we open that up and look at IBEST nationally, we see even more variables because of differences in state and local systems. So with Washington state having originated the model, we've done a lot of the kind of training and dissemination of the model nationwide and have worked with close to 30 states in a variety of settings, credit and non-credit, and where adult ed is in the community and technical college system, and other times when it's more based in the K-12 system. The main thing that I want to emphasize is that the 3 foundational elements remain the same. For IBEST to really be IBEST, it's about that contextualization of standards to outcomes, the team teaching, and the wraparound supports or navigational services. From there, we again can see a lot of variance. We've seen states use different team teaching overlap percentages. I mentioned we use a 50% minimum overlap in Washington state. Some states have chosen to reduce that, so they might even go down to 25% overlap. In Washington State, all of our workforce programs that are available to IBEST are college credit programs. We don't have non-credit career tech counterparts. However, many states that we've worked with do have robust non-credit CTE programs. And so you'll see in those situations, IBEST as a non-college credit bearing program, whereas in Washington State, there's always college credit attached to IBEST. So that's another big difference that we see. And then the funding models can vary greatly. In Washington State, all of our college presidents came together in the early days of IBEST and approved an enhanced FTE. So when a college runs an IBEST program, they get an enhanced FTE count coming out of that program that helps boost their enrollment count for the program. No other state that I know of really does it quite in that way. So they're looking at other ways to kind of incent and provide some of the extra funding needed to do the work. Some of this can look like simply replacing traditional adult ed programming. So where you're doing more standalone adult ed programming, you shift that to do more of this contextualized IBEST programming. States also leverage grants, like the federal tax grants of old. A lot of those were used to help implement IBEST. Other state and local grants can be leveraged. And they use these funding sources really on upfront costs, because an IBEST program will pay for itself over time through increased retention and completion, but the upfront planning costs can be high. Getting faculty together to plan the team teaching, to integrate the standards to the outcomes, those types of things, the curriculum development, ongoing professional development. So we want to see funding support those upfront costs for IBEST, but once we have a stable teaching team in place, they've been teaching for a year, 2 years, they get to know each other and the content really well, and you don't have to keep recontextualizing the standards to the outcomes because that work is done, right? We do see those program costs decrease over time. But states and local areas do have to look at what grant funding and one-time money they might be able to leverage to support those upfront costs. The final thing that I would like to add in terms of national variance is really around the high school completion piece. Part of the point of IBEST is that we can place students who don't yet have a high school credential into post-secondary pathways, and they can pick up their high school credential along the way. In Washington, we do that through a competency-based high school program called High School Plus that allows students to co-enroll in IBEST and high school completion and have the IBEST work count toward the completion of the high school diploma, which is issued by the college. However, many states and programs that we work with are pretty focused on the equivalency exam, the GED, the HiSET. And so in those programs, they will still need to look for ways to teach kind of GED relevant content or help the student prepare for passing the GED exam in addition to the exam or the end of the program for the career tech, the workforce side of the house. So that's another place where states and programs will vary in terms of how they incorporate the high school equivalency or high school diploma content into the program.
Great, thanks. That's really helpful. I wanted to just ask you a little bit more about how IBEST has matured since its inception and where it is now institutionally in Washington State.
Thank you. Another great question, Michelle. And the IBEST model, if we want to really speak about it almost as a model more than as a program, has evolved over time. It's one of my favorite things about IBEST is that I've seen it take those 3 foundational elements and then adapt and flex as the times change and there's new demands and new ideas about what's best for students. So I would say the number one way that we've been seeing it evolve lately in Washington State is a movement from the short-term professional technical certificate programs to the academic IBEST model, which really focuses on those core gateway courses like English and math in a degree pathway. Washington State is a guided pathways state. So all of our community and technical colleges are working on these kind of guided pathway frameworks and reforms. Guided pathways, in a very small nutshell, are structured career pathways that are designed around industry need and really helping students from the beginning prepare to enter into the industry of our choice. And in that scenario, our academic IBEST model has gained a lot of traction because it really is the best solution for getting students through the initial part of the degree program, which again has so much to do with those English and math requirements and other gateway courses in that pathway. And so we've been using that academic IBEST model to really help bridge students into and through the first stages of the degree program. We still use the traditional IBEST model quite a bit. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still quite robust. But the academic model has really emerged as the biggest growth area for us. So that's really the expansion from certificates to both workforce and transfer degrees. I also mentioned the co-enrollment in our High School Plus program. That started to see greater growth too, as that High School Plus program has become more evolved and more robust. We've had a lot of co-enrollment opportunities there. And then finally, this is the newest model, so I'm giving you a taste of the future here. It's the IBEST at Work model, and that's really an incumbent worker integrated education and training program, where we bring the adult education instruction on site to a workplace to pair up with the job training in the workplace to help students stay competitive and advance within the industries that they're already in. So more to come on that model.
I'm glad you mentioned guided pathways, Will. Guided pathways are closely related to the concept of career pathways, with a strong focus on the credit earning aspects or opportunities of pathways. And we did not tackle the topic of guided pathways in the practice guide because the What Works Clearinghouse team's literature search and review did not turn up enough research that met WWC's evidence standards. But it's really encouraging to hear about the work that Washington State is doing in this area. I appreciate your insights on IBEST. The practice guide highlights IBEST and shares some vignettes of team teaching models that our viewers may want to consider. In the development of the practice guide, the expert panel wanted to acknowledge that there are many other organizations outside of community colleges that colleges can partner with to prepare students for the occupational training programs offered by the college and for college level work. One of these types of organizations are local adult education programs. Which brings us to our other guest, Danielle, who is the Regional Integrated Education and Training Coordinator at Peninsula Regional Education Program, or PrEP for short, which is an adult education program in Newport News, Virginia. Danielle, can you tell us a little bit about PrEP and your work there?
Sure, thanks, Michelle. PrEP is a regional education program which is a part of the Newport News public school system in Virginia. We serve James City County and York County and the cities of Hampton and Newport News, Poquoson and Williamsburg, all in Southeast Virginia. Our program is located in 15 different community locations across the region. We serve in 3 jails, and we serve approximately 1,400 adult learners across all our programs each year. PrEP offers adult basic education, GED prep, English language instruction, one-on-one tutoring, workforce preparation, and integrated education and training, which is the program that I oversee. Our IET program follows the Plugged in Virginia model. Plugged in Virginia, which is known as Pipa, is the career pathway initiative in the state that began in 2009. The Pipa model has 7 main components: contextualized academic skills instruction with GED preparation if it's needed, professional soft skills, digital literacy, 21st century skills. Those are things like critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, communication, and workplace readiness activities, which are, of course, the resume writing, job search skills, interviewing skills, and we try to provide work-based experiences, along with integrated applications, which are capstone projects. And then, of course, the occupational training. Region 21 in Virginia has been implementing IET since 2012. I've been coordinating our IET since 2018. Through the years, we have offered IETs in logistics, construction trades, HVAC specific, CNA specific, pharmacy tech specific, certified medical administrative assistant, information technology, and Microsoft Office specialist. We have used a few different instructional models to deliver IETs. For example, in our logistics training course, our adult education instructor actually teaches a 2-week intensive boot camp prior to the occupational training with our partner, Hampton University College. And during this boot camp, we work with our students to complete North Star digital literacy certifications, prepare for the CRC, develop the language of the logistics trade, and complete digital career exploration projects. We also include employer guest speakers throughout. After the boot camp, the instructors work together to deliver the logistics content and help students prepare for the credentialing exam. The trainer takes the lead at this point while the adult education instructor provides pull-out assistance, reading and test-taking strategies, and other supports. The adult ed instructor may also explain a concept in a different way if it is proving to be difficult for students. After the occupational training portion is concluded, students attend one final week with the adult ed instructor to cover mock interviews, job searches, and final resume development. We try to make sure they're ready for the workplace right after they finish their training. We follow a similar sequence with our pharmacy technician, CNA, and HVAC IETs. We partner with Thomas Nelson Community College to deliver those IETs. Our most recent iteration of the IET is actually an open enrollment format. We have found that many of our WIOA partner agencies like Social Services and DARS need a training course that's open throughout the year to new enrollments so that they can immediately engage their clients in workforce training. Our DARS partner was engaged throughout the planning process for this IET. We're utilizing LearnKey and Certiport as the training provider, and they're the training provider for Microsoft Office Specialist. Students are able to work in this program at their own pace. They attend classes twice per week with our adult education instructor who focuses on contextualized vocabulary instruction, live Microsoft Labs, and general digital literacy instruction. Each student meets individually with a career coach who assists with career planning, job searches, resume development, and personal development. So that's a departure. Instead of it being one cohort that follows all the way through, it's very highly individualized, and we still keep those main components of the IET. Finally, we offer our enhanced Pipa model with a robust 8 or 9 week bridge class that is specific to a particular career pathway. Our enhanced Pipa model has allowed us to strengthen student skills in the 7 components of Pipa through a very focused 8-week bridge class that they take before entering into occupational training.
Thanks, Danielle. Could you share a little more about the enhanced Pipa model? What was the rationale for offering an 8-week bridge class in addition to team teaching or co-teaching taking place in the IET?
So in implementing Pipa, we faced challenges in recruiting a cohort of students for courses that were dedicated to one specific career path, like CNA. PrEP also identified a need for more dedicated time and support for students to complete career exploration activities and build their academic and employability skills, which are needed to succeed in occupational training and in the workplace. In 2019, we added a bridge phase, which we call Pipa Bootcamp, to the original Pipa model to address those needs. So the basic framework of the bridge is an 8 or 9 week bootcamp. We have ones focused on construction trades as a part of the Department of Labor Youth Build Grant. We also have one focused on IT, healthcare, and logistics. The bootcamp is designed to provide contextualized instruction in reading, mathematics, writing, and digital literacy that will improve our students' outcomes when they move on and complete their training with our partners. So for example, the healthcare bootcamp emphasizes medical terminology, comprehension of text using context clues, operations, and measurement involving fractions, things like that, that are very relevant to the healthcare training. We also involve a career coach who teaches soft skills and provides employer engagement activities. The career coaches assist students with enrollment at the community college and follows their progress throughout their training, advocating for their needs as they arise. Additionally, we provide a math tutor during training so that students have ready access to support. They are already well acquainted with them even while they're in their training. During the planning phase for each of these boot camps, I gather information about course content from occupational trainers and coordinators, course textbooks, exams. Similar to Washington State, we also use CCRS, the College and Career Readiness Standards, and I compare the course objectives with CCRS and then collaborate with our instructors to develop a course plan. So basically, PrEP's enhanced Pipa model has 2 phases of services. The bootcamp's 8-week bridge, which is phase 1, and the Pipa IET, which is phase 2. Students who complete phase 1 bootcamp can enroll in the integrated education and occupational training.
Thanks, Danielle. It's helpful to hear how your specific program is structured. So you have previous experience as an instructor. What advice do you give to instructors on your team when they begin to contextualize their curriculum? Where does someone new to contextualization begin, and how can they ensure that their curriculum is going to support students in being successful in their occupational courses?
That's a great question. My recommendation for my instructors, and I'm talking mainly about my bridge instructors, is that I suggest that they start at the end What are the main objectives in the training program? What kinds of questions are on the NCCER core exam, for example? You may not have access to the certification exams, but the occupational program coordinators can certainly point you in the right direction for course objectives and are usually happy to share information with you because they want the students to be successful as well. Once you identify where you want your students to be academically, look for the underlying skills that are required for them to be successful. Our instructors co-plan with occupational instructors. In these conversations, they talk with occupational instructors about areas where they routinely see students struggle. They can design lessons that address those underlying skills. You can ensure that your curriculum will support the success of students in their occupational courses by consulting the subject matter as much as possible. It needs to be connected. You need to know that students are going to come across proportions in pharmacy technician, for example. Additionally, you can send a survey to students after they complete the bridge program and their training program to gauge how well equipped they felt. Some of our instructors were or are employed in the occupational area that they're teaching, but most of them aren't. In the planning for the bridge and IET phases, we do have our adult education and occupational instructors collaborate with one another to contextualize the curriculum. And this collaboration helps our adult education instructors be more comfortable teaching the occupational concepts. The amount of time co-planning really does vary. Co-planning can be weekly, but it's usually as needed. The adult education instructor usually tries to identify areas of difficulty for the students, assist them with exam preparation and things like that. The instructor working with our pharmacy technician students, for example, is already very experienced with the math curriculum and program. So most of her communication with the instructor is usually done by phone calls or through emails.
Great. So one of the how-to steps is to assess students up front and also continuously assess students throughout the participation in the program. Does the importance of student assessment ring true in your practice? And how do you use assessment to inform your instruction?
Absolutely. We use CASAS as pre and post assessments to identify areas of strength and weakness in math and reading. The data gathered from these assessments helps us identify areas that we need to address individually with students. I also review the entrance tests to the training programs, if there are some, and then create pre-tests as tools for our instructors to inform their instruction. So in addition to the lesson plans with the instructors, we also utilize several online learning programs to further individualize instruction. So instructors also informally assess students' progress throughout the course and make modifications as needed.
Will, you've been an IBEST instructor as well in previous years. Is there anything you'd like to add about this instructional piece? What are some lessons that you've learned in team teaching with an occupational instructor or contextualizing instruction?
Thanks, Michelle. I think Danielle's answers are excellent to that question. I defer to those specifics, but just based on my own experience, what I remember is on the one hand, being willing to really put in the time to plan ahead and to recognize that your team teacher might have a different preference or feeling for how planning should go. And so that's a little bit of a dance. Sometimes you have somebody very type A and someone very last minute. And so you've got to make those negotiations together. So being willing to do the planning time up front, but also being willing to flex in the moment when last minute changes are needed can really smooth it out if an instructor's willing to do those things. And then I think just being really supportive of each other. And anytime you've got to navigate a difference or a little bit of a conflict, to do that respectfully outside of the classroom, but that inside of the classroom time, students really need to see a close-knit team that really each faculty member values the other and really supports the way that they instruct. I think those are some of the biggies.
That's great. Thank you. Are there any tips or lessons that you would like to share with our viewers around planning and implementing contextualized learning during the COVID-19 pandemic? I'd be curious to see what you each think on that issue.
So learning in a virtual setting turns out to be a skill. That does not come naturally to many of our students. One of the benefits of our Bridge program is that we were able to work out all the digital literacy deficits, develop familiarity with the Canvas LMS, develop Zoom etiquette, and teach students to self-advocate before they even get to occupational training. Learning at home has already become a part of their life for 2 whole months before their training even begins.
In Washington State, we created a 6-week webinar series on offering IBES remotely. And I think it actually did a lot of the things that Danielle just mentioned. So rather than add to that, I would simply say that series is available online at the State Board website. So you can search for Online IBES Web Series 2020, and that should help you find that, because we recorded all of those webinar sessions to kind of document the way that we made that transition.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for taking the time to share what you're doing around instruction to help students succeed. I'm going to now turn the time back to Sarah, but thank you again.
Thanks, Michelle. I want to thank everyone for tuning into this video, and I extend my gratitude to Michelle, Will, and Danielle. Thank you again for taking your time today to share your knowledge and your experience with delivering contextualized and integrated basic skills instruction as part of Career Pathways Initiative. It was especially helpful to hear about at the very end there, that shift to the COVID-19 pandemic and that flex, right, as you were saying, Will. So thank you also to IES for funding the Practitioner's Perspective video series. The Designing and Delivering Career Pathways at Community Colleges practice guide can be accessed through the What Works Clearinghouse website. And we're going to continue the conversation in the next Practitioner's Perspective video series on Recommendation 3, which will be moderated by expert panelist Eric Heiser. To our audience, if you have additional questions for our guests, feel free to connect with Michelle via email. Her email address is displayed on the slide. Thanks, everyone, and stay safe.